Hello everyone, nice to see you again in today's story. On the Boring Channel, we would like to introduce to you an ancient story that science cannot explain. Now we invite you to listen to this story. Hey guys, tonight we continue our exploration into the whispers of past, diving headfirst into ancient Egypt mysteries science can't explain part 2. Picture yourself right now on the Giza Plateau. The air is warm, even as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The desert wind, a constant companion here, whips fine grains of sand against your face, a gentle exfoliation courtesy of millennia. Before you, impossibly vast and ancient, looms the colossal form of the Great Sphinx, its human face and lion's body a silent sentinel, its gaze fixed on an eternity you can barely comprehend. The air crackles with secrets older than sand, mysteries baked into the very bedrock by the relentless Egyptian sun. If you were actually there, standing before these riddles unprepared, let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive the sheer mind-bending scale of it all, or maybe just the distinct lack of decent Wi-Fi and readily available iced lattes. It's a tough gig, being an ancient mystery. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. It's always cool to see how far these whispers of the past are traveling. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself drawn closer to this magnificent hybrid creature, the Great Sphinx of Giza. It's an icon instantly recognizable, a cornerstone of our collective image of ancient Egypt. Mainstream Egyptology tells us, with a good degree of confidence, that this monumental sculpture was carved around 2500 BCE during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. The face, though weathered by time and, let's face it, some rather unfortunate historical target practice, is widely believed to be that of Pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the second largest pyramid on the Giza Plateau, which stands directly behind it in a rather photogenic alignment. It's carved from a single massive outcrop of limestone, a natural hillock left standing when the surrounding stone was quarried for the pyramids. Imagine the scene: hundreds, perhaps thousands, of workers toiling under the Egyptian sun, their copper chisels and stone mauls chipping away, slowly coaxing this immense form from the living rock. Its nose, famously absent, probably a bad selfie angle, or maybe an overly enthusiastic pigeon. History's a bit fuzzy on that one. But even without its original schnoz, the Sphinx exudes an undeniable power, a silent, watchful presence that has captivated imaginations for millennia. But as you gaze upon its weathered flanks, something catches your eye. Deep, vertical fissures run down the limestone body of the Sphinx and, more strikingly, along the walls of the enclosure, the pit from which it was carved. These aren't just superficial cracks. They look like channels, grooves carved by water. Lots of it. This is where our first mystery begins to unfurl, like an ancient papyrus scroll found tucked away in a forgotten tomb. You see, the Giza Plateau is part of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest places on Earth. Significant rainfall, the kind that could carve such deep channels into solid rock, hasn't been a feature of this landscape for a very, very long time. This observation is the linchpin of a controversial theory championed by researchers like John Anthony West and geologist Dr. Robert Schoch. They propose that the erosion patterns on the Sphinx and its enclosure walls are not primarily the result of wind and sand, as traditionally thought, but rather precipitation-induced weathering. Heavy, prolonged rainfall, they argue, is the only plausible explanation for these specific types of vertical weathering. And if that's true, it throws a rather large spanner in the conventional timeline. The last time Egypt experienced such a wet climate, capable of producing that kind of erosion, was before 3000 BCE, possibly as far back as 7000 to 10,000 BCE, during a period known as the African Humid Period, when the Sahara was a savanna, not a desert. This would make the Sphinx thousands of years older than the pyramids it supposedly guards, predating the accepted timeline of Egyptian civilization itself. Imagine Khafre showing up with his copper chisels and saying, "Right, lads, let's just tidy up this pre-existing giant catman out of this hill. Should be done by tea time." Yeah, not quite the same narrative. Naturally, this older Sphinx theory is hotly debated. Mainstream Egyptologists point to other factors that could explain the erosion. Wind-driven sand, they argue, can be surprisingly abrasive over millennia. There's also the issue of haloclasty, where salt crystals from groundwater get into the pores of the stone, expand, and cause the rock to flake. The limestone of the Sphinx itself is known to be of varying quality, with some layers being softer and more susceptible to weathering than others. Perhaps, they suggest, the lower, more heavily eroded sections are simply made of poorer quality stone. It's a complex puzzle, and geologists and Egyptologists still argue whether the deep vertical fissures on the Sphinx's enclosure walls are primarily the result of ancient, heavy rainfall or more conventional arid weathering processes combined with the inherent geology of the site. The debate often gets quite heated, with accusations of pseudo-archaeology on one side and rigid adherence to dogma on the other. It's like a very slow, very dusty academic cage match. Adding another layer of intrigue to the Sphinx's age is the quirky, and for some compelling tidbit concerning the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce. In the 1930s and 40s, Cayce, while in a trance state, made numerous pronouncements about ancient history, including the claim that a hall of records lies hidden beneath the Sphinx's paws. This chamber, he said, contains scrolls detailing the history of humanity, including knowledge from the lost civilization of Atlantis, supposedly placed there by survivors of the cataclysm. While this is firmly in the realm of fringe theory for most academics, seismic surveys conducted around the Sphinx in the 1990s did reveal anomalous cavities or chambers beneath the monument. Official explanations often suggest natural fissures or small tombs, but for proponents of Cayce's prophecies, it's tantalizing evidence. So underneath this stony feline could be the ultimate ancient library, or perhaps just a very, very old lost property office. Only time or a very lucky drill bit will tell. As you stand there, the shadows lengthening, the cool desert air replacing the day's heat, you can't help but feel the weight of the unknown. The Sphinx keeps its secrets well. Is it a monument to Khafre's reign, a testament to the incredible engineering prowess of the Fourth Dynasty? Or is it a much older enigma, a relic from a forgotten epoch, silently watching civilizations rise and fall, patiently waiting for its true story to be understood? The wind whispers around its massive paws, carrying grains of sand and, perhaps, the echoes of an answer that continues to elude us. The sheer scale of it, the enduring mystery, makes you feel incredibly small, a tiny speck in the grand, sprawling timeline of this ancient land. The sun has now dipped below the horizon, and the Giza stars, unpolluted by city lights, begin to prick the inky canvas above. You've left the enigmatic gaze of the Sphinx behind, but the sense of deep time and unsolved riddles clings to you like the fine desert dust. Your journey continues, though, not physically across the sands, but through the annals of Egypt's most perplexing artifacts. You find yourself mentally transported south, down the fertile ribbon of the Nile, to the ancient cult center of Abydos. This isn't just any old Egyptian town. Abydos was one of the oldest cities of ancient Egypt, considered a sacred site, a gateway to the afterlife, and the burial place of its earliest pharaohs. The Temple of Seti I, in particular, is renowned for its exquisite reliefs, some of the finest and best preserved in all of Egypt. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, depicting gods, goddesses, and pharaohs in intricate detail, their stories frozen in stone for over 3,000 years. As you wander through the hypostyle hall of Seti I's temple, your eyes trace the hieroglyphs adorning a massive stone lintel high above your head. These are the sacred texts, the stories of creation, the hymns to the gods. But then something seems out of place. Amongst the beautifully carved ankhs, jade pillars, and receptors, a particular section of glyphs catches your attention, and not for its artistry. These symbols look familiar, uncomfortably familiar. One distinctly resembled a helicopter, complete with rotor blades. Another looks suspiciously like a modern submarine, or perhaps a futuristic-looking tank. There's even something that could be interpreted as a jet plane or a flying saucer. You blink, wondering if the desert heat, or perhaps that second helping of baklava at dinner, is playing tricks on your eyes. But no, they're still there, clear as day, etched into the ancient stone. What on earth are these modern-looking machines doing in a 3,000-year-old Egyptian temple? This is the mystery of the Abydos helicopter and its companions. Mainstream historical fact tells us that the Temple of Seti I was built during his reign, around 1290 to 1279 BCE. His son, Ramesses II, later completed some of the decorations. The glyphs in question are indeed genuine, not a modern hoax. They are there for anyone to see. The controversy, of course, lies in their interpretation. Proponents of ancient astronaut theories, or those who believe in lost, highly advanced ancient civilizations, see these carvings as irrefutable proof. They argue that the ancient Egyptians either witnessed these machines themselves, perhaps brought by extraterrestrial visitors, or by a technologically superior, forgotten culture, or that they possessed knowledge of such technology which was later lost. It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it? Ancient Egyptians zipping around in Apaches, or Ramesses the Great taking a quick spin in his personal stealth bomber. It'd certainly make conquering Nubia a bit quicker. However, Egyptologists have a much more mundane, though still fascinating, explanation. It's a case of palimpsest. That's a fancy word for a manuscript or piece of writing material on which later writing has been superimposed on effaced earlier writing. In this case, it's carved hieroglyphs. The theory is that the panel was originally carved with one set of hieroglyphs during Seti I's reign. Later, during the reign of Ramesses II, these inscriptions were filled in with plaster and recarved with new hieroglyphs. Over the millennia, the plaster has fallen out, revealing parts of both the original and the later inscriptions. The helicopter is said to be a result of the hieroglyph meaning, who repulses the nine bows, a term for Egypt's enemies, being superimposed over the name of Seti I, he who is of the two ladies. The overlapping symbols, purely by chance, create shapes that our modern eyes, conditioned by 20th and 21st century technology, interpret as familiar machines. It's a remarkable coincidence, a sort of ancient Rorschach test. One man's symbol for defeating enemies becomes another's attack chopper. It's all about perspective, or perhaps an overactive imagination fueled by too many sci-fi movies. The quirky tidbit here is that these out-of-place artifacts, or OP arts, aren't unique to Abydos, though these are certainly some of the most famous. Similar claims have been made about various objects and depictions from other ancient cultures around the world. The challenge always lies in rigorously examining the context, the materials, and the most parsimonious explanations before jumping to extraordinary conclusions. It's far easier to imagine ancient aliens than to painstakingly reconstruct the process of recarving and erosion. It's like seeing faces in the clouds. Our brains are wired to find patterns, even if they're not really there. Or are they? What if the recarving itself was an attempt to hide something? Okay, probably not, but it's fun to speculate. Historians still argue whether the Abydos helicopter glyphs are definitive proof of advanced ancient knowledge or simply a coincidental overlapping of recarved hieroglyphs. While the palimpsest explanation is widely accepted by mainstream scholars, the images are so striking that they continue to fuel speculation and debate, especially in popular culture and online forums. It's a testament to how readily we project our own understanding of the world onto the past. The ancient Egyptians, after all, had their own wonders, their own advanced understanding of engineering, astronomy, and art. They didn't need helicopters to be impressive. Building the pyramids with ramps and levers was arguably a more incredible feat of project management than flying a Black Hawk. You step back from the lintel, your neck slightly cricked from staring upwards. The rest of the temple is filled with undeniably Egyptian art, scenes of offerings, battles, and religious rituals. These strange glyphs are an anomaly, a tiny blip in a vast tapestry of otherwise consistent iconography. Yet they stick in your mind. Are they a cosmic joke, a trick of time and erosion, or a fleeting glimpse of something more, a secret whispered across the millennia that we are only just beginning to misinterpret? The cool stone of the temple walls seems to absorb your questions, offering no easy answers. The silence of Abydos is profound, broken only by the imagined whir of rotor blades from an age that should not have known them. It makes you wonder what other coincidences might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for 21st century eye to assign them a new, perhaps entirely erroneous meaning. Leaving the curious aircraft-like glyphs of Abydos to their stony silence, your journey through Egypt's unexplained mysteries carries you further down the Nile, towards Dendera. The landscape shifts subtly. The lush green banks of the river remain a constant, but the character of the ancient sites evolves. You find yourself approaching the Dendera temple complex, a place dedicated primarily to Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, music, dance, and motherhood, basically, the ancient Egyptian goddess of a really good time. The main temple is remarkably well preserved, particularly its massive hypostyle hall with its towering columns topped with Hathor-headed capitals. The ceilings are adorned with intricate astronomical carvings, including a famous zodiac, a copy of which is now in the Louvre, while the original remains safely in situ, albeit darkened by centuries of soot. It's a place of profound beauty and palpable ancient spirituality. But it's not the main hall or the zodiac that draws your attention for this particular mystery. You venture deeper into the gloomier, less visited crypts beneath the temple. These subterranean chambers are narrow, the air is cool and still, and the reliefs carved into the walls take on a different, more enigmatic quality in the dim light. It is here, in one of these hidden crypts, that you encounter the famous Dendera light. On a large stone panel, you see depictions of elongated, tube-like objects, each containing a wavy line, like a serpent, extending from a lotus flower. The tube itself appears to be supported by a jed pillar, a symbol often associated with stability and the backbone of the god Osiris. At the thicker end of the tube, a human figure seems to be holding or interacting with it, while a cable or cord appears to connect the lotus flower base to a rectangular box or pedestal. To a modern observer, the resemblance to giant electric light bulbs, complete with filaments and power sources, is uncanny. These reliefs have, understandably, become a cornerstone for theories suggesting the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of electricity. Could these carvings be schematics for actual working light bulbs, used to illuminate the dark inner chambers of temples and tombs, thus explaining the lack of soot deposits that would surely result from torches or oil lamps in many well-preserved, unblackened areas? It's a compelling image. Priests in their white linen robes, flicking a switch, or perhaps chanting the correct incantation, to illuminate these sacred spaces with a clean, bright, electric light. It would certainly make carving those intricate hieroglyphs in the pitch-black depths of a tomb a whole lot easier. No more tripping over the cat mummy in the dark. The mainstream historical fact is that the Dendera temple complex, particularly the Ptolemaic and Roman structures you're visiting, dates primarily from around 54 BCE to 60 CE. This is relatively late in Egyptian history, a time when Egypt was under Greek and then Roman influence. The reliefs themselves are ancient, but the question is, what do they actually depict according to conventional Egyptology? Scholars interpret these scenes in a purely symbolic and mythological context. The elongated bulb is seen as the womb of the sky goddess Nut, or a representation of the primordial mound from which creation sprang. The serpent inside is typically identified as the god Harsamptis, Horus the Uniters, a snake-formed deity emerging from a lotus flower, symbolizing creation and the rising sun. The jed pillar is Osiris, and the cable is often interpreted as the path of the sun or a symbolic connection. The figures are priests or deities involved in a creation myth or ritual. So, instead of a high-tech lighting system, it's a complex cosmological diagram. Sounds less fun, but perhaps more historically plausible. Now for quirky tidbit related to the no-soot argument often used to support the ancient electricity theory. While it's true that many tombs appear remarkably clean, Egyptologists point out that the Egyptians were meticulous. They could have used oil lamps made from materials that produced less soot, like clarified oil, or employed a system of mirrors to reflect sunlight into the tombs during construction and decoration. Furthermore, some tombs do show evidence of soot, and in those that don't, it's possible that any soot was carefully cleaned away upon completion, or that the decorators worked in short bursts, allowing smoke to clear. It's also worth noting that the Dendera light reliefs are in a crypt, a place not typically requiring constant illumination for workers, but rather for ritualistic purposes. The idea of ancient electricians having to shimmy down into a tiny crypt to change a giant mythological light bulb is also, well, a bit amusing. Plus, Akhenaten, the cosmic serpent filaments blown again. Egyptologists and alternative theorists still argue whether the Dendera reliefs depict genuine electrical lighting devices or are purely symbolic representations of Egyptian creation mythology. The visual similarity is undeniably striking, but proponents of the mythological interpretation emphasize that there's no other archaeological evidence, no remnants of bulbs, wires, or power sources to support the existence of electric lighting in ancient Egypt. Occam's razor tends to favor the explanation that doesn't require inventing a completely lost technology. Yet, the images persist, challenging our assumptions. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, is it really a symbolic representation of a primordial serpent deity emerging from a lotus womb of sky goddess? Sometimes the simplest-looking explanation feels the most complicated. As you stare at these strange carvings, the faint light filtering into the crypt seems to mock the very idea of ancient electricity. The air is thick with the scent of old stone and something indefinably ancient, almost like ozone, but that's probably just your imagination running wild. The silence here is different from Abydos. It's heavier, more confined. You can almost hear the hushed chants of priests performing secret rites in this very chamber, their understanding of these images perhaps lost to us forever. Were they indeed venerating a symbol of creation, or were they preserving the schematics of a forgotten technology, a sacred science passed down through generations of initiates? The stone remains stubbornly silent, offering only its cryptic pictures as evidence. The light bulbs of Dendera continue to shine a light, not on the tombs themselves, but on the enduring mystery of how much we truly understand about the ancient Egyptian mind. Leaving the subterranean enigmas of Dendera, your thoughts still flickering with images of lotus flowers and cosmic serpents, you find yourself drawn back towards the ancient heartland of Memphis, near the sprawling necropolis of Saqqara. This is a landscape dominated by pyramids older even than those at Giza, including the famous step pyramid of Djoser, the architectural granddaddy of them all. But it's not another pyramid that calls to you. It's something buried deeper, something altogether more baffling. You're heading towards the Serapeum of Saqqara, a complex of underground galleries that served as the burial place of the sacred Apis bulls. These weren't just any bulls. They were considered living manifestations of the god Ptah and later Osiris. When an Apis bull died, it was mummified with all the pomp and ceremony befitting a deity and interred here in a truly monumental fashion. As you descend into the network of tunnels, the scale of the place begins to dawn on you. The main galleries are vast, hewn directly from the bedrock, and lining these subterranean corridors are the sarcophagi. But to call them mere sarcophagi feels like a profound understatement. You encounter enormous monolithic boxes, each carved from a single block of incredibly hard stone, granite, diorite, or basalt, materials quarried hundreds of miles away in places like Aswan. There are 25 of these colossal boxes, each weighing an estimated 70 to 100 tons, including their equally massive lids. The precision is breathtaking. The surfaces are often polished to a mirror-like sheen, the corners perfectly square, the lids fitting so snugly that, in some cases, it said you couldn't slip a piece of paper between the box and its lid. The sheer engineering challenge of creating, transporting, and installing these behemoths in these narrow underground tunnels is mind-boggling. How did the ancient Egyptians, supposedly equipped with only copper tools, dolerite pounding stones, and rudimentary transport methods like rollers and sledges, manage to quarry these multi-ton blocks of some of the hardest stone on Earth? How did they achieve such astonishing precision in their cutting and polishing? And then, how did they maneuver these giants down ramps, around corners, and into their final resting places within the confined space of the Serapeum's tunnels? The official explanation involves immense manpower, incredible skill, patience, and generations of accumulated knowledge. Mainstream historical fact confirms that the cult of the Apis bull was indeed a significant part of Egyptian religion for centuries, and the Serapeum was its sacred necropolis, used from around the 18th dynasty, circa 1550 BCE, through to the Ptolemaic period. Auguste Mariette, the French Egyptologist, rediscovered the Serapeum in 1850, finding most of the sarcophagi plundered, though one was found intact, its contents sadly decayed. But for many, the conventional explanations feel insufficient to account for the scale and precision on display. The boxes seem almost too perfect, too massive for the accepted toolkit of the ancient Egyptians. This has led to speculation about lost technologies, perhaps sonic drilling or advanced stone-cutting techniques far beyond what is currently understood. Could these boxes have been intended for something more than just bull burials? Some theorists point to the resonant properties of the granite and the precise construction, suggesting they might have been part DF some unknown energy-generating or amplifying device. One can imagine them humming with a forgotten power, though what that power was, or for what purpose, remains entirely speculative. It's a classic case of how done it on a pharaonic scale. Trying to get one of those into your average crypt would be like trying to parallel park a double-decker bus in a phone booth. Quirky tidbit about the Serapeum involves the few inscriptions found on some of the sarcophagi. While some are beautifully inscribed with hieroglyphs dedicating them to specific Apis bulls, others are surprisingly crude, almost graffiti-like, or even completely blank. And some of the lids don't quite match the quality of the boxes they sit upon. This has led some to suggest that perhaps the boxes themselves are far older than the dynastic Egyptians who used them, and that the pharaohs simply found these incredible ancient artifacts and repurposed them for their sacred bulls, adding their own inscriptions later. If true, who made them originally, and why? It's a tantalizing thought, the Egyptians themselves as inheritors of an even more ancient, lost technology. This idea, of course, is not widely accepted by mainstream Egyptologists, who see the variations as indicative of different periods of construction or differing levels of resources available at the time of each bull's death. Egyptologists and independent researchers still argue whether the massive, precision-engineered granite boxes of the Serapeum were entirely the product of dynastic Egyptian craftsmanship using known tools, or if they represent evidence of a far more advanced, lost technology, possibly inherited from an earlier civilization. The air in the Serapeum is cool and damp, with the faint, earthy smell of the surrounding bedrock. As you run your hand over the impossibly smooth, cold surface of one of these granite giants, you can't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with profound bewilderment. The silence in these tunnels is absolute, broken only by the drip of condensation or the distant echo of your own footsteps. It's a silence that seems to amplify the mystery. These boxes are not just containers. They are statements. Statements of power, of devotion, and perhaps of a technological capability that we are struggling to fully comprehend. They sit in their dark galleries, monuments to immense effort and skill, guarding their secrets as stubbornly as they once guarded the mummified remains of the sacred bulls. Were they simply the ultimate coffins for divine animals, a testament to Egyptian piety taken to an extreme? Or are they, as some whisper, silent relics of a forgotten age of wonders, their true purpose lost to the sands of time, their construction method a puzzle that still defies easy explanation? The sheer weight of the stone seems to press down, not just physically, but with the burden of unanswered questions. You emerge from the cool subterranean gloom of the Serapeum, blinking in the bright Egyptian sun, the image of those colossal granite boxes still vivid in your mind. The scale of ancient ambition is almost overwhelming. Your journey now takes you further south again, up the Nile to the ancient city of Swenet, now Aswan, the traditional southern frontier of pharaonic Egypt. Aswan was, and still is, famous for its stone quarries, particularly the red and gray granite that was prized by Egyptian builders for millennia. This is where the raw material for countless obelisks, statues, sarcophagi, and temple elements originated, laboriously wrested from the earth. And it is here, in one of these ancient quarries, that you encounter a monument not to completion, but to ambition thwarted, the unfinished obelisk. Stretching out before you, still attached to the bedrock from which it was being carved, lies an obelisk of truly staggering proportions. If completed and erected, it would have stood an estimated 42 meters, nearly 138 feet, tall and weighed a colossal 1,200 tons. To put that in perspective, it would have been roughly one-third taller and heavier than any other ancient Egyptian obelisk ever successfully raised. It lies there, tilted at a slight angle in its quarry bed, a frozen testament to a grand vision that was never realized. You can see the quarrymen's marks, the channels they pounded out, the evidence of their painstaking labor. It's an open-air museum of ancient quarrying techniques. The mainstream historical fact is that this obelisk is generally attributed to the reign of Queen Hatshepsut, a powerful female pharaoh of the 18th dynasty around 1470 BCE. She was a prolific builder, responsible for many magnificent structures, including her terraced mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri. This obelisk was likely intended for the temple of Ammonius at Karnak, perhaps to stand alongside others she successfully erected there. The ancient Egyptians quarried such massive monoliths by first identifying a suitable stretch of granite, free from major flaws. They would then carve a trench around the obelisk's perimeter, a process achieved by relentlessly pounding the hard granite with dolerite balls of an even harder stone, weighing several kilograms each. It was incredibly labor-intensive work, requiring teams of men working for months, possibly years. Once the sides were free, they would then have to undercut it, possibly by drilling holes and inserting wooden wedges that were then soaked with water, causing them to expand and crack the stone, or perhaps by using fire and water to weaken the base. The unfinished obelisk offers a unique insight into this process because, well, it's unfinished. Work was abandoned, most likely because large cracks appeared in the granite as it was being freed from the bedrock. You can still see these flaws today. Imagine the disappointment of the overseers and the workers, after so much effort, to discover that their monumental undertaking was fatally compromised. It must have been a gut-wrenching moment. The discovery of these flaws is the accepted reason for its abandonment. It's like baking the world's biggest cake, only to find a giant crack down the middle just as you're about to put the icing on. A truly monumental bummer. But the unfinished obelisk also raises questions that feed into the ongoing debate about ancient Egyptian technology. While the dolerite ball pounding method is accepted for rough shaping, some researchers point to features on this and other quarried stones that suggest more advanced techniques might have also been employed, perhaps for finer work or initial channeling. The sheer scale of this particular obelisk also pushes the boundaries of what seems feasible with the accepted toolkit. Even if successfully quarried, how would they have transported a 1,200-ton monolith from Aswan to Karnak, hundreds of miles downriver? And then, how would they have erected it? We know they successfully moved and erected obelisks weighing hundreds of tons, but this was on another level entirely. Academics and engineers still debate the precise methods ancient Egyptians would have used to transport and erect a monolith of the unfinished obelisk's immense size, had it been completed. The logistics are staggering, involving massive barges, enormous ramps, and an almost unimaginable amount of coordinated human effort. Or perhaps something else, a quirky tidbit surrounding the unfinished obelisk, is the sheer number of dolerite pounding stones found in and around the quarry site, thousands of them. It paints a vivid picture of the relentless, percussive nature of the work, the constant thud of stone against stone echoing through the quarry. But it also subtly underscores the immense human cost and time involved. Some alternative theorists, looking at the scale and the precision elsewhere in Egypt, like those Serapeum boxes we just mentally visited, wonder if the dolerite pounding was the primary method for all aspects of quarrying such giants, or if it was mainly for rough work, with other, perhaps lost, techniques used for more precise or rapid stone removal when needed. The unfinished obelisk, by showing the standard method so clearly, almost makes any deviation from it elsewhere seem even more mysterious. It's like they were saying, see? This is how we normally do it, slowly and painfully. So how do we do that other thing so quickly and perfectly? As you stand beside this sleeping giant of granite, the heat radiating from the stone, you feel a strange mix of awe and melancholy. It's a monument to ambition, to human endeavor, but also to the limits imposed by nature and perhaps by technology. You can almost hear the ghosts of the quarrymen, their grunts of effort, the rhythmic clang of their tools, the eventual despairing cry as the fatal crack appeared. It lies here as a puzzle. Was its abandonment solely due to the visible cracks? Or did the project also reach a point where the sheer scale outstripped even the formidable capabilities of Hatshepsut's engineers? It serves as a powerful reminder that for every magnificent temple and towering pyramid successfully completed, there were undoubtedly projects that failed, dreams that crumbled back into the bedrock. The unfinished obelisk doesn't just tell a story of how things were made. It whispers of the immense challenges, the trial and error, and the occasional heartbreaking defeat, even for a civilization as mighty as ancient Egypt. Leaving the silent, sun-baked ambition of the unfinished obelisk behind you in Aswan, your mind travels northwards once more, this time to the Fayum oasis, a lush, fertile depression southwest of Cairo. This region was a vital agricultural center for ancient Egypt, a breadbasket teeming with life. But it was also the site of one of antiquity's most enigmatic and, according to ancient writers, most astounding structures, the lost labyrinth of Hora. This isn't a labyrinth in the Minotaurinime's sense, but rather a colossal architectural complex, so vast and intricate that it baffled and amazed those who claimed to have seen it. Your guide to this mystery is none other than Herodotus, the father of history, who visited Egypt in the 5th century BCE. He described the labyrinth in detail in his histories, and he was not one to be easily impressed. He claimed it surpassed even the pyramids in its wondrousness. According to Herodotus, the labyrinth was an immense building with 12 covered courts, 6 facing north and 6 facing south, all enclosed by a single wall. It supposedly contained 3,000 chambers, 1,500 above ground and 1,500 below, filled with hieroglyphs and paintings. He wrote, "The passages were bewilderingly intricate, and the courts, with their varied colonnades and endless corridors, presented 1,000 occasions for wonder." He even claimed that the kings who built it were eventually entombed there. Other ancient writers, like Strabo and Pliny the Elder, also mentioned this extraordinary structure, corroborating its existence and its bewildering complexity. Strabo described it as a work equal to the pyramids, and Pliny called it the most astonishing work of human ingenuity. High praise indeed from seasoned observers of ancient wonders. The mainstream historical fact is that this labyrinth was associated with the pyramid of Pharaoh Amenemhat III, a powerful ruler of the 12th dynasty who reigned around 1860 to 1814 BCE. His pyramid at Hera, though now a sadly dilapidated mud brick mound, once stood proud, and adjacent to it, to the south, was a vast mortuary temple. It is this mortuary temple complex that is widely believed to be the labyrinth described by Herodotus and others. Archaeological excavations, most notably by Flinders Petrie in the late 19th century, did indeed uncover the foundations of an enormous structure south of Amenemhat III's pyramid. Petrie found a vast area, roughly 300 meters by 240 meters, about 1,000 by 800 feet, covered with a deep layer of stone chips and fragments of columns, statues, and architectural elements, the remnants of a once grand edifice. This discovery seemed to confirm the location and sheer scale of the labyrinth. So, if we know where it was and who built it, where's the mystery? The mystery lies in the fact that what Petrie found was essentially a field of debris. The magnificent structure described by Herodotus, with its thousands of rooms and bewildering passages, is gone, vanished, obliterated. While the foundations confirm its size, the actual superstructure, the labyrinthine marvel itself, has been almost entirely lost to the ravages of time, stone quarrying by later builders. The Romans were particularly notorious for recycling ancient monuments, and possibly the rising water table in the Fayum. We have the footprint, but the building itself has become a ghost. It's like finding the instruction manual for the most amazing IKEA flat pack ever, but the actual furniture pieces have been carted off and turned into firewood. The quirky tidbit here revolves around the sheer discrepancy between Herodotus's vivid, almost awestruck description of a multi-story complex filled with wonders and the relatively sparse archaeological remains. This has led some to question whether Herodotus was exaggerating, or perhaps conflating different structures, or even if the labyrinth he saw was somehow different from Amenemhat III's mortuary temple. However, given the corroboration from other ancient writers and the sheer scale of the foundations Petrie uncovered, most scholars accept that Amenemhat III's complex was a labyrinth. The real quirk is how such a monumental structure, which Herodotus deemed more wondrous than the pyramids, could disappear so completely. It speaks volumes about the destructive power of later civilizations and the relentless recycling of building materials. It's a sobering thought that something so vast could be so thoroughly erased. Perhaps there's a lesson there about the impermanence of even the grandest human achievements. Archaeologists and historians still argue whether the full extent and nature of the labyrinth of Hera, as described by Herodotus, can ever be truly reconstructed from the existing archaeological evidence, or if its legendary complexity will remain largely in the realm of ancient testimony. As you try to mentally reconstruct this lost wonder from the dust and descriptions, you can't help but feel a profound sense of loss. Imagine wandering those thousands of rooms, gazing at painted reliefs that told forgotten stories, getting lost in its intentionally confusing corridors. What secrets did it hold? What knowledge was inscribed on its walls before they were torn down and carted away? The search for the true labyrinth continues, with some modern researchers using ground-penetrating radar and other remote sensing techniques to try and map out more of the subterranean levels that Herodotus mentioned, hoping to find sections less disturbed by later quarrying. The dream of rediscovering intact portions of this legendary structure, perhaps even some of those underground chambers, still flickers. For now, the Labyrinth of Hera remains one of Egypt's most tantalizing phantoms, a colossal ghost haunting the Fayum oasis, its reality attested by ancient voices and a vast, empty footprint in the sand. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest mysteries are not what we can see, but what has been lost. Leaving the ghostly footprint of the lost labyrinth in the Fayum, your journey now takes you not to a physical place, but into the intriguing and often contentious world of ancient Egyptian king lists and chronicles. You find yourself poring over, metaphorically speaking, a particularly fragmented and famous papyrus known as the Turin King List, or more formally, the Turin Royal Canon. This isn't a grand monument of stone, but a fragile document, pieced together from many small scraps, that holds potentially explosive implications for our understanding of Egypt's earliest history. It's currently housed in the Egyptian Museum in Turin, Italy, hence its name. The Turin King list is written in hieratic, a cursive form of hieroglyphs, and dates to the reign of Ramesses II, circa 1279 to 1213 BCE, around the same time those curious Abydos glyphs were being, shall we say, edited. It's prized by Egyptologists because, unlike other lists which often present a sanitized or selective version of pharaonic succession, the Turin Papyrus seems to have been a more comprehensive administrative document. It lists rulers, often including the lengths of their reigns in years, months, and even days, and it doesn't shy away from including obscure or ephemeral kings, even those from periods of division like the Hyksos rulers, whom later pharaohs often tried to erase from history. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a meticulously kept, if somewhat battered, royal spreadsheet. The mainstream historical fact is that the Turin King list is considered one of the most important chronological sources for the history of ancient Egypt, especially for the early dynasties and the intermediate periods, for which other records are scarce. Despite its fragmentary condition, large parts are missing, and what remains is often damaged. Scholars have painstakingly reconstructed much of it. It provides invaluable data for establishing the sequence and duration of pharaonic reigns, forming a backbone for the chronology that Egyptologists use today. It lists human pharaohs going back to the unification of Egypt under Menes or Narmer, around 3100 BCE. So far, so good, right? It's a detailed, if imperfect, historical record. But here's where it gets truly mysterious and sends ripples through conventional timelines. Before it lists Menes and the dynastic human rulers, the Turin King list includes a section detailing a period of rule by gods, followed by demigods or spirits, and then a group known as the Shem-Suhor, the followers of Horus. And the reign lengths attributed to these divine and semi-divine predecessors are, to put it mildly, extraordinary. We're talking reigns lasting hundreds, even thousands, of years for individual divine rulers. The gods Ta, Shu, Geb, Osiris, Set, and Horus are listed, among others, as having ruled Egypt for immense spans of time before the first human pharaoh. The Shem-Suhor, who are depicted as bridging the gap between gods and men, are also credited with very long reigns. It's enough to make Methuselah look like he died in infancy. This, of course, presents a major challenge to a purely historical, literal interpretation of the document if one tries to extend that literalism to the pre-dynastic sections. Mainstream Egyptology generally interprets these pre-dynastic portions of the Turin King list as mythological. The incredibly long reigns of gods and demigods are seen as symbolic, representing a golden age, a sacred primeval era before human history began. The Shem-Suhor are often viewed as legendary chieftains or priestly lines from the pre-dynastic period, their reigns perhaps conflated or exaggerated over time, or representing dynasties rather than individuals. It's a way of grounding the pharaonic lineage in a divine past, legitimizing the rule of human kings by showing they inherited their authority from the gods themselves. Makes sense. If you're a pharaoh claiming you're great, insert a few hundred greats, Grandpappy was a god who ruled for 700 years is pretty good PR. The quirky tidbit here is that some alternative historians and proponents of lost civilization theories take these long reigns of gods and Shem-Suhor much more literally. They argue that these aren't just myths, but garbled accounts of actual, incredibly long-lived rulers from a forgotten, highly advanced civilization that predated dynastic Egypt. Perhaps these gods were not deities in the supernatural sense, but highly sophisticated beings, maybe even extraterrestrial, or survivors of an earlier cataclysm like Atlantis, whose lifespans or periods of influence were vastly greater than ordinary humans. This interpretation attempts to reconcile the Turin list with theories of a much older, more technologically advanced precursor to Egyptian civilization, one whose history has been largely erased or mythologized. It's a leap for sure, but it taps into that persistent question. What if there's more to these ancient myths than just stories? Egyptologists and alternative theorists still argue whether the pre-dynastic sections of the Turin King list, detailing divine and semi-divine rulers with extraordinarily long reigns, should be interpreted purely mythologically, or if they might contain echoes of a forgotten historical reality, perhaps of pre-dynastic chieftains or even a lost, earlier civilization. As you contemplate the fragile, reconstructed fragments of the Turin Papyrus, you're struck by the dual nature of such documents. They are both invaluable historical records and, potentially, repositories of myth and legend, with the lines between the two sometimes blurred. Do the scribe who painstakingly copied out these names and reign lengths under Ramesses II believe he was recording literal history all the way back to the gods? Or was he consciously transmitting a sacred tradition, a foundational myth that explained the origins of his world and the divine order of kingship? The papyrus itself, being an administrative document for much of its length, lends a certain air of factual recording even to its more fantastical early sections. It's this blend that makes it so tantalizing. It doesn't scream myth. It just quietly lists RA, followed by a reign length that would make your eyes water, and then moves on. The ultimate ancient deadpan delivery. The Turin King list, in its tattered glory, reminds us that even the most meticulous records can hold layers of meaning, and that the past, especially the very distant past, often speaks to us in a language that mixes fact, faith, and perhaps forgotten truths. Leaving the cryptic annals of the Turin King list, with its god kings and their impossibly long reigns, your focus shifts back to the Giza Plateau, to the most iconic and enduring of all ancient Egyptian mysteries, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. We've touched upon the Sphinx, but now we turn to its colossal neighbor, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. It's not just its size, though that is undeniably staggering, 146.6 meters, 481 feet, high originally, composed of an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks, averaging 2.5 tons each. It's the precision. The precision is what whispers of something extraordinary. Tonight, we're not going to rehash all the theories about how it was built, whether by ramps, levers, or alien anti-gravity devices, though that last one makes for a fun mental image. Imagine the traffic jams with all those levitating blocks. Instead, you're going to focus on one specific, almost unbelievable aspect of its construction: its alignment to true north. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with a degree of accuracy that is astonishing, even by modern standards. The four sides of its base are almost perfectly oriented along the cardinal directions. The average error is just a tiny fraction of a degree. Specifically, the pyramid is misaligned by an average of only about 3 arc minutes, or 1/20th of a degree, from true north. To put that in perspective, if you were trying to point directly north with your finger, and you were off by that amount, it would be an almost imperceptible deviation. Achieving this on a structure with a base covering 13 acres is a feat of surveying that demands explanation. The mainstream historical fact is that ancient Egyptian surveyors were highly skilled. They had a deep understanding of practical geometry and astronomy, essential for tasks like demarcating agricultural land after the annual Nile flood and for orienting their sacred structures. Several methods have been proposed by which they could have achieved such remarkable accuracy in aligning the Great Pyramid. One popular theory involves using the stars. By observing the rising and setting of a particular star in the northern sky, or by bisecting the angle between the rising and setting positions of a circumpolar star, one that never dips below the horizon, they could have established a true north-south line. Another method, known as the solar gnomon method, involves tracking the shadow cast by a vertical pole and gnomon throughout the day. The shortest shadow marks noon, and the line connecting the points where the shadow was of equal length before and after noon would give an east-west line, from which north-south could be derived. These methods, while requiring meticulous observation and careful execution, are theoretically capable of producing the accuracy seen in the Great Pyramid. It would have required clear skies, very precise measurements, and a lot of patience, No GPS back then, just keen eyes and a profound connection with the cosmos. But even with these proposed methods, the sheer exactitude achieved on such a massive scale continues to fascinate and puzzle. How do they transfer these celestial or solar alignments to the vast footprint of the pyramid with such minimal error? How do they maintain this accuracy as the structure rose, layer by layer? The core masonry of the pyramid, though immense, is actually quite precisely laid. It's not just a pile of rocks. It's an engineering marvel. This precision is not accidental. It was clearly a deliberate and crucial aspect of the pyramid's design. It suggests a level of planning, surveying skill, and technological competence that, while not necessarily lost high technology in a sensational sense, was certainly at the very peak of what was humanly possible with the tools and knowledge then available. It makes you wonder if our modern reliance on satellites and lasers has made us underestimate what could be achieved with simpler, yet profoundly understood principles. Maybe they just had really good plumb bobs and an intern with hawk-like eyesight. A quirky tidbit regarding the pyramid's alignment is its relationship to the Earth's dimensions. Some researchers have noted that the pyramid's dimensions seem to encode geographical and astronomical data. For example, if you take the original height of the pyramid and multiply it by 2 pi, you get a figure very close to its perimeter. This suggests the builders might have understood the mathematical constant pi. Furthermore, some have suggested that the pyramid's dimensions are a scale model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth, with its perimeter representing a fraction of the Earth's equatorial circumference and its height a fraction of the polar radius, at a scale of 1:43,200. This is highly controversial and not accepted by mainstream Egyptology, which tends to view such correspondences as coincidences arising from the pyramid's geometry and the specific units of measurement, the royal cubit, used. However, the precision of its north-south alignment makes one pause and consider whether other precise measurements might also hold significance. Egyptologists and archaeoastronomers still debate the exact methods used to achieve the Great Pyramid's remarkable alignment to true north, and whether its sophisticated geometry and placement encode advanced astronomical or geographical knowledge beyond simple cardinal orientation. Was it purely for religious or symbolic reasons, aligning with the circumpolar stars which the Egyptians associated with eternity? Or was there a deeper, perhaps scientific, understanding embedded in its very foundations? As you stand in your mind's eye, at the foot of this ancient giant, the cool night air swirling around its immense stone flanks, you look up towards the pole star. The same stars wheeled across the sky for Khufu's builders. The silence of the desert is broken only by the whisper of the wind, a sound that has caressed these stones for 4.5 millennia. The pyramid's steadfast, almost perfect orientation is a silent rebuke to the notion that ancient peoples were primitive. It speaks of a profound connection to the cosmos, a desire to anchor their most sacred structures to the very fabric of the universe. It's a precision born not of digital readouts, but of careful observation, deep understanding, and an almost obsessive dedication to getting it right. And that, in itself, is a mystery worth pondering. The mindset, the focus, the sheer human determination required to achieve such perfection on such a scale, so long ago. It's a testament to what can be done when human ingenuity aligns with a grand vision. The Great Pyramid's mysteries don't just reside in its external precision or its alignment with the stars. They also lie deep within its massive stone bulk. Having contemplated its near-perfect orientation, your attention now turns inwards, to the hidden chambers and passages that have puzzled explorers and scholars for centuries, and to new discoveries that suggest this ancient wonder has not yet yielded all its secrets. You imagine yourself shrinking down, passing through the imposing stone blocks, into the cool, dark heart of the pyramid. The internal structure of the Great Pyramid is unique among Egyptian pyramids. It has 3 known main chambers, a subterranean chamber cut into the bedrock beneath the pyramid, unfinished and rough, the so-called Queen's Chamber, located in the lower part of the pyramid's superstructure, also strangely unfinished and misnamed. It likely never housed a queen, and the king's chamber, higher up, lined with massive granite blocks and containing a large, lidless granite sarcophagus. These chambers are connected by a series of passages, including the impressive Grand Gallery, a corbelled marvel of engineering that rises steeply towards the king's chamber. For centuries, this was the accepted layout. But the pyramid is vast, and the volume occupied by these known rooms and passages is a surprisingly small fraction of its total mass. What if there was more? The mainstream historical fact is that the internal design of the Great Pyramid underwent several changes during its construction. It's believed that the subterranean chamber was the original burial chamber, then abandoned. The Queen's chamber might have been the next intended burial spot, also abandoned. Finally, the king's chamber was constructed as the pharaoh's ultimate resting place. These changes in plan are not uncommon in pyramid construction, reflecting evolving architectural ideas or perhaps ritualistic requirements. The purpose of these chambers, particularly the king's chamber with its stark, empty sarcophagus, Khufu's mummy has never been found, has been extensively debated. Was it truly just a tomb? Or did it serve other, perhaps ritualistic or symbolic functions? Now, fast forward to the 21st century. In 2017, an international research project called Scan Pyramids, using non-invasive techniques like muography, which detects muons, cosmic ray particles that pass through stone, infrared thermography, and 3D simulation, announced a stunning discovery: a large, previously unknown void or cavity located above the Grand Gallery. This void, dubbed the Scan Pyramid's Big Void, or SPGV, is estimated to be at least 30 meters, nearly 100 feet long, with a cross-section similar to that of the Grand Gallery itself. It's a substantial space hidden within the solid masonry of the pyramid for 4,500 years, its existence completely unsuspected until modern particle physics came along. It's like finding a secret room in your house you never knew existed. Only this house is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Talk about a fixer-upper with hidden potential. The discovery of this void has, naturally, sparked immense excitement and speculation. What is its purpose? Is it another chamber? A hidden passage? Or is it something related to the construction process? Perhaps a stress-relieving feature designed to protect the Grand Gallery below from the immense weight of the pyramid above it? Mainstream Egyptologists and archaeologists are cautious. Many lean towards a construction-related explanation. For example, it could be a large internal ramp used during the building of the upper sections of the pyramid, or a space left by the decay of such a ramp. Or it could be a series of smaller, intentionally left gaps designed to reduce pressure. Remember those relieving chambers, made of massive granite beams above the king's chamber, designed to distribute weight? This void could be something similar on a larger scale, or perhaps a different engineering solution to a similar problem. The initial muography results indicated a large, continuous void, but its exact shape, orientation, and internal structure are still being investigated. Scientists and Egyptologists still argue vigorously about the function and nature of the large void discovered above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid, with theories ranging from it being an undiscovered chamber to an intentional constructional feature for weight distribution, or an internal ramp. A quirky tidbit related to hidden spaces in the Great Pyramid comes from earlier explorations. In the 9th century CE, the Arab caliph Al-Ma'mun, driven by tales of hidden treasure and ancient wisdom, forced his way into the pyramid. His men, unable to find the original entrance, which was cleverly concealed, reputedly tunneled their way in, creating the entrance most visitors use today. Legend has it they were guided by the sound of a stone falling inside, which led them to the descending passage. While they didn't find the vast treasures they hoped for, the pyramid was likely plundered in antiquity. Al-Ma'mun's breach did reopen the pyramid to exploration after centuries of being sealed. It makes you wonder what other subtle clues or sounds might have been missed over the millennia, or what tiny, almost imperceptible anomalies might hint at further hidden structures. Maybe the pyramid occasionally sneezes, and that's a sign? Probably not. The existence of the big void and potentially other, smaller, as yet undetected cavities, skin pyramids also hinted at a smaller void behind the north face, deepens the mystery of the Great Pyramid. It suggests that this ancient structure, so familiar, so studied, still holds surprises. It's a reminder that what we see on the surface, or even in the known internal chambers, may not be the whole story. The pyramid guards its secrets well, encased in millions of tons of stone. The thought that there are still significant, undiscovered spaces within this iconic monument is thrilling. What knowledge, what artifacts, what understanding of its builder's intentions might lie within these hidden voids, waiting for technology sensitive enough or explorer bold enough to reveal them? The Great Pyramid, it seems, is not just a monument to the past, but an ongoing archaeological adventure, its heart still beating with undiscovered secrets. Having pondered the recently discovered voids hidden deep within the Great Pyramid, your attention now focuses on another set of enigmatic features that have long puzzled researchers, the so-called air shaft found in the King's and Queen's chambers. These narrow, rectangular shafts, only about 20 centimeters, 8 inches square, ascend outwards from the chambers at an angle, passing through the pyramid's massive core masonry towards the exterior. For a long time, they were assumed to be, as their common name suggests, ventilation shafts, designed to provide air to the workers during construction or to the chambers themselves. But this explanation, like so many things about the Great Pyramid, has come under scrutiny, revealing a far more intriguing and possibly celestial purpose. You focus first on the King's Chamber. Two shafts originate from its north and south walls. The northern shaft rises at an angle of approximately 31 degrees and, if extended, would have originally exited the pyramid pointing towards the circumpolar stars, specifically towards the region of Thuban Alpha Draconis, which was the pole star around the time the pyramid was built. Due to the precession of the equinoxes, our current pole star, Polaris, was not in that position then. The southern shaft from the King's Chamber rises at a steeper angle of about 45 degrees and aligns with the constellation of Orion, particularly the star Alnitak in Orion's belt, as it would have been positioned in the sky around 2450 BCE. Orion held immense significance for the ancient Egyptians, being associated with the god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife and symbol of resurrection. The pharaoh was believed to ascend to the stars to join Osiris after death. It's quite a celestial send-off package, better than any first-class airline ticket. Then there are the shafts in the Queen's Chamber, discovered much later than those in the King's Chamber in 1872. These are even more mysterious because, unlike the King's Chamber shafts which were open to the chamber, these were originally sealed at their inner ends with thin stone slabs, only discovered when these slabs were broken through. Furthermore, these shafts do not appear to penetrate all the way to the exterior of the pyramid. The northern shaft from the Queen's Chamber points towards the constellation Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, while its southern counterpart is aligned with the star Sirius, Sopdet to the Egyptians, which was associated with the goddess Isis, Osiris's consort, and whose heliacal rising, its first appearance after a period of invisibility, heralded the annual life-giving inundation of the Nile. The mainstream historical fact is that these alignments are now widely recognized by many archaeoastronomers. The theory, most prominently advanced by researchers like Robert Bauval and Adrian Gilbert in the 1990s, though earlier scholars had noted some alignments, is that these shafts were not for ventilation but were intentionally designed as symbolic or ritualistic pathways for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to specific star regions associated with Egyptian deities and concepts of the afterlife. The circumpolar stars, which never set, symbolized eternity. Orion, Osiris, and Sirius, Isis, were central to their cosmology and beliefs about rebirth. This star correlation theory provides a compelling explanation for the precise angles and orientations of these otherwise enigmatic shafts. However, this interpretation is not without its critics. Some Egyptologists remain skeptical, arguing that the alignments might be coincidental, or that the shafts serve a more practical, perhaps structural or even acoustic purpose that we don't yet understand. The fact that the Queen's chamber shafts were sealed and don't reach the outside is particularly problematic for the ventilation theory, but also raises questions for the soul pathway idea. Why seal a path for the soul? Perhaps the act of opening them ritually was part of the funerary process. Or maybe they were symbolic, even if not physically traversable. It's like installing a really fancy cat flap for your soul, but then boarding it up just in case. Egyptologists and archaeoastronomers still debate the primary function of the Great Pyramid's air shafts, whether they were purely symbolic stellar alignments for the pharaoh's afterlife journey, or if they served some other, possibly undiscovered, practical or ritualistic purpose within the pyramid's design. The quirky tidbit here involves the explorations of the Queen's chamber shafts using small robots. In 1993, a German robotics engineer, Rudolf Gantenbrink, sent a small wheeled robot named Up-You-Out-2, Opener of the Ways, in ancient Egyptian, a rather fitting name, up the southern shaft of the Queen's chamber. After traveling some 65 meters, 213 feet, they encountered another stone door or blocking slab, this one with 2 copper handles or pins. This discovery caused a sensation. What lay behind this second door? In 2002, another expedition drilled a small hole through this door and inserted a fiber optic camera, only to find a small, empty space and then another, rougher-looking blocking stone beyond it. A later exploration in 2011 by the Jetty robot, named after the magician who supposedly advised Khufu, provided clearer images and even managed to look behind this third Gantenbrink's door, revealing more copper fittings and some red ochre markings, but no grand chamber or inscriptions. The northern shaft of the Queen's chamber also has a similar blocking stone. These doors deep within shafts that don't even reach the outside add yet another layer of mystery. Are they symbolic barriers, or do they once lead somewhere that was later sealed off? The saga of the robot explorers and the Gantenbrink door is a modern technological quest echoing ancient mysteries. As you visualize these narrow passages angling up into the darkness of the pyramid's core, you can't help but be captivated by their celestial alignments. Whether they were functional airways, symbolic soul paths, or something else entirely, their precise orientation toward specific stars speaks volumes about the ancient Egyptians' profound connection with the night sky. The stars were not just distant points of light, they were a map of the afterlife, a divine realm to which the pharaoh aspired. These shafts, whether truly opening the ways or merely symbolizing that journey, are like telescopes built into the very fabric of the tomb, focusing the pharaoh's spirit towards its eternal destiny. They transformed the pyramid from a mere pile of stones into a cosmologically aligned resurrection machine, a silent stone testament to a belief system that intimately wove together life, death, and the glittering tapestry of the cosmos, leaving the star-aligned shafts of the Great Pyramid to their silent vigil. Your journey now takes a colorful turn, shifting from monumental architecture to the realm of ancient chemistry and artistry. You find yourself examining not colossal stones, but vibrant hues, specifically a brilliant, captivating blue that seems to defy the ages. This is Egyptian blue, a pigment so remarkable that it's considered by many to be the world's first known synthetic pigment. Its creation was a triumph of ancient material science, a testament to Egyptian ingenuity that went far beyond just stacking big rocks. Imagine the workshops of ancient Egyptian artisans, perhaps near a temple complex or a royal palace. The air is filled with the smell of kilns and crushed minerals. Here, craftsmen were not just painting pretty pictures. They were engaging in sophisticated chemical processes to create colors that would adorn tomb walls, statues, amulets, and faience objects, bringing their world to vivid life. While natural pigments like red and yellow ochres, black carbon, and white gypsum were readily available, a vibrant, stable blue was harder to come by. Precious lapis lazuli could be ground to make ultramarine, but it was incredibly expensive, imported from distant Afghanistan. So the Egyptians, ever resourceful, invented their own. Necessity, as they say, is the mother of chromatic invention. The mainstream historical fact is that Egyptian blue, also known as calcium copper silicate, CuC40, first appears in the archaeological record during the 4th dynasty, circa 2613 to 2494 BCE, the very same period when the Giza pyramids were being built. This is no coincidence. The burst of innovation and organizational skill that allowed for pyramid construction also fostered advancements in other crafts. The recipe for Egyptian blue was complex. It required heating a mixture of a calcium compound like limestone or chalk, a copper compound like malachite or bronze filings, silica, sand, or quartz, and an alkali flux like natron or plant ash to a very specific temperature range, typically between 800 and 900 degrees Celsius, 1470 to 1650 degrees Fahrenheit. If the temperature was too low, the reaction wouldn't complete, too high, and the mixture would decompose or form a black glassy slag. The process also required careful control of the kiln atmosphere. It was a precise bit of chemistry discovered and perfected thousands of years ago. The resulting crystalline blue pigment was then ground into a powder to be used as paint or as a colorant for faience, a type of glazed ceramic. It was incredibly stable, resistant to fading from sunlight or alkaline conditions common in plaster walls, which is why so many examples of it still look astonishingly vibrant today. It's like they invented the everlasting gobstopper of pigments. But here's where the mystery, or at least the wow factor, comes in. How did they stumble upon this precise recipe? And how did they achieve and maintain the necessary high temperatures and controlled kiln conditions with the relatively simple technology available to them? Modern attempts to replicate Egyptian blue have shown that it's not a straightforward process. The proportions of the ingredients and the firing conditions are quite critical. It suggests a long period of experimentation, trial and error, and careful observation, essentially the scientific method in action, long before it was formally defined. The fact that they could consistently produce this complex material across centuries speaks to a sophisticated understanding of chemical reactions and pyrotechnology. Some scholars suggest that the knowledge might have even been a closely guarded secret, passed down through guild of artisans. It's one thing to accidentally make something blue once. It's another to develop a reliable manufacturing process for it. A quirky and fascinating tidbit about Egyptian blue is its remarkable photoluminescent properties, discovered only relatively recently. When Egyptian blue is illuminated with visible light, it emits near-infrared (NIR) radiation. This means that even if the blue color has faded to the point of being invisible to the naked eye, its presence can often be detected using infrared imaging techniques. This property has become a valuable tool for archaeologists and art conservators, allowing them to identify traces of the pigment on artifacts where it was previously thought to be lost, or to distinguish it from other blue pigments. It's like the pigment has a hidden signature, a secret glow that it reveals only under the right conditions. It also opens up intriguing, if highly speculative, possibilities. Could the ancient Egyptians have been aware of this infrared emission, even if they couldn't see it in the way we can with modern sensors? Probably not, but it's a cool thought. Ancient infrared security systems made of blue paint. More practically, this NIR emission is so strong and stable that modern scientists are exploring uses for Egyptian blue in biomedical imaging, security inks, and even as a coating for energy-efficient windows. An ancient pigment with a high-tech future. Talk about a comeback. Scientists and historians still debate the exact developmental pathway of Egyptian blue's manufacturing process. Was it a lucky accident arising from faience or metalworking, or a more deliberate research program? And how widespread was the most sophisticated knowledge of its production? While the basic ingredients are known, the nuances of controlling the kiln atmosphere and temperature with ancient technology to consistently achieve the desired vibrant hue without an unacceptable failure rate remain areas of active research and discussion. It's a testament to the fact that ancient technology doesn't always mean simple technology. As you gaze upon a fragment of faience, its blue glaze still brilliant after millennia, you realize you're looking at more than just a pretty color. You're looking at a feat of ancient chemistry, a product of keen observation, experimentation, and a deep understanding of materials. Egyptian blue is a tangible link to the innovative spirit of a civilization that can not only move mountains of stone, but also master the delicate art of creating beauty from sand, lime, and copper. It's a vibrant splash of genius, a blue thread woven through the tapestry of Egyptian history, reminding us that sometimes the most profound mysteries are hidden not in the grand scale of monuments, but in the tiny, shimmering crystals of a man-made marvel. Leaving the shimmering, scientific marvel of Egyptian blue behind, your journey now veers into a more shadowy, and perhaps more sensational, realm of ancient Egyptian mysteries, the curse of the pharaohs. This is the chilling idea that anyone who dares to disturb the eternal slumber of a pharaoh or desecrate their tomb will fall victim to misfortune, illness, or even death, brought about by ancient magical protections. It's a narrative that has captivated the public imagination for decades, fueled by dramatic newspaper headlines and spooky Hollywood movies. But is there any truth to it, or is it all just a very effective ancient keep-out sign amplified by modern superstition? You find yourself, metaphorically, at the entrance to a newly discovered tomb, perhaps in the Valley of the Kings. The air is thick with anticipation, the scent of dust and ages undisturbed. Warnings, real or imagined, echo in your mind. Death shall come on swift wings to him that toucheth the tomb of the pharaoh. Or so the legend goes. The idea of curses is deeply rooted in ancient Egyptian beliefs. Tombs were indeed sometimes inscribed with warnings intended to deter plunderers. These inscriptions might threaten divine retribution or invoke dangerous guardian spirits against anyone who would defile the sacred space or harm the deceased's remains. The Egyptians took the afterlife very seriously, and protecting the pharaoh's passage to it, along with his buried treasures, was of paramount importance. So, a little bit of magical discouragement for potential grave robbers made perfect sense. Think of it as the original home security system, with supernatural tripwires. The mainstream historical fact is that while such protective inscriptions existed, they were not as common or as luridly specific as popular culture often portrays. Many tombs have no curse inscriptions at all. Those that do exist typically call upon gods like Anubis, guardian of the dead, or Sekhmet, a fierce lioness goddess of destruction, to punish transgressors, or they might threaten earthly woes like poverty, childlessness, or a miserable end. The really famous curse narrative, however, became globally prominent with the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb by Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon in 1922. This was an electrifying event, the unearthing of an almost intact royal burial, filled with unimaginable treasures. The alleged curse of Tutankhamun ignited when Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financial backer, died suddenly about 6 months after the tomb was opened. He succumbed to blood poisoning, apparently caused by an infected mosquito bite that he nicked while shaving. This, combined with a few other deaths or misfortunes among people loosely connected to the excavation over the following years, was seized upon by sensationalist newspapers eager for a dramatic story. The media frenzy created a powerful myth. Journalists, and even some prominent figures like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes and a believer in spiritualism, fanned the flames, suggesting that ancient Egyptian magic was indeed at play. It didn't matter that Howard Carter himself, the man who spent a decade meticulously clearing the tomb, lived for another 17 years, dying at the age of 64 from lymphoma, a perfectly ordinary, if unfortunate, cause. Nor did it matter that most of the individuals who entered the tomb or handled the artifacts lived long and healthy lives. The cursed narrative was just too good to let facts get in the way. It's the ultimate clickbait ancient Egyptian style. The quirky tidbit here is that some scientists have proposed rational, albeit still somewhat speculative, explanations for the curse phenomenon should there be any statistical anomaly in deaths, which most studies show there isn't. One theory suggests that ancient tombs, sealed for millennia, could harbor dormant, pathogenic bacteria or molds. When a tomb is opened, these microorganisms could become airborne and infect susceptible individuals, particularly in an era before widespread antibiotic use. Think of it as a very, very old can of whoop-ass, microbiologically speaking. For example, species of Aspergillus mold, which can cause respiratory infections, have been found in some ancient tombs. Another idea points to potentially toxic substances used in mummification or sealed within the tomb, like formaldehyde, hydrogen sulfide, or ammonia, which could be released when the tomb is breached. While these toxic tomb theories are intriguing, they are not widely accepted as a primary cause for the deaths associated with Tutankhamun's discovery, which are generally better explained by coincidence, age, and the prevailing health conditions of the early 20th century. Historians and scientists still argue whether there's any factual basis beyond coincidence and media hype for the curse of the pharaohs, with most scholars dismissing it as myth, while a few continue to explore potential environmental hazards within sealed tombs. As you consider the power of this enduring legend, you realize it speaks more about human psychology than about ancient Egyptian magic. We are fascinated by the idea of the past reaching out to affect the present, of ancient powers still holding sway. The cursed narrative adds a thrilling, dangerous edge to the already romantic allure of archaeology. It's a story that taps into our primal fears of disturbing the dead and the unknown. The ancient Egyptians themselves, with their elaborate preparations for the afterlife and their warnings against desecration, certainly understood the power of such ideas. Perhaps the most effective curse was not a magical spell, but the enduring respect and awe and a little bit of superstitious fear that these ancient resting places still inspire. In a way, the pharaohs, through these stories, continue to protect their legacies, ensuring they are never truly forgotten, even if the protection comes via a shiver down your spine rather than a thunderbolt from the gods. The curse might be fiction, but the sense of trespassing on sacred, ancient ground when entering a pharaoh's tomb, that feeling is very real, leaving the dramatic, albeit largely debunked, legends of pharaonic curses to linger in the shadowy corners of your mind. Your attention now returns to the tangible, to the hard evidence of ancient Egyptian craftsmanship that continues to baffle engineers and stonemasons. You find yourself examining not just the massive scale of their constructions, but the intricate details, the precision cuts, and the curious tool marks left behind on some of the hardest stones they worked, like granite, diorite, and basalt. These marks suggest that their toolkit might have been more sophisticated or used in more ingenious ways than the simple copper chisels, dolerite pounders, and sand abrasion that are often cited as their primary methods. You're focusing on evidence of what appear to be advanced drilling and cutting techniques. Imagine looking closely at a granite sarcophagus, like one of those colossal boxes in the Serapeum, remember those heavy hitters, or at core drill holes found in various temple sites and unfinished artifacts. You might notice perfectly circular holes, sometimes several inches in diameter, drilled deep into the stone, with spiral grooves running down the inside of the hole. These grooves, known as rifling marks, are characteristic of a drill that was rotating and being pushed down with considerable force and speed. Furthermore, analysis of these core drill holes sometimes shows that the drill bit was cutting faster at the outer edge than at the center, suggesting a hollow tube drill was used. The question is, what kind of drill, made of what material, and powered how, could achieve this in incredibly hard igneous rock? The mainstream historical fact is that ancient Egyptians were undoubtedly masters of stoneworking. They did possess copper tools, including saws and drills. It's generally accepted that for working hard stones, they use these copper tools in conjunction with an abrasive powder, most likely quartz sand, which is much harder than copper. The copper tool would essentially act as a carrier for the abrasive, which did the actual cutting or grinding. For drilling, a bow drill could have been used, where a bowstring is rapidly moved back and forth to rotate a spindle holding the drill bit. This method, combined with a steady supply of abrasive and significant downward pressure, could, over time, drill into granite. It would have been a slow, laborious process, requiring immense patience and skill. It's the ancient equivalent of trying to cut through a steel door with a butter knife and a lot of sand, possible, but you'd need a very long lunch break. However, some researchers, notably engineer and independent investigator Christopher Dunn, have argued that the evidence points to something more. Dunn, in his detailed analysis of tool marks, particularly core drills and saw cuts, suggests that the feed rates, the speed at which the tool advanced into the stone, and the precision observed are indicative of machining capabilities far beyond simple hand tools and manual abrasion. He points to the regularity of the spiral grooves in core drill holes, suggesting a consistent rotational speed and downward pressure that would be difficult to achieve manually with a bow drill, especially for deep holes. He also highlights examples of sawn surfaces on granite boxes that appear incredibly flat and smooth, with tool marks suggesting very large, powerful saws. He posits that the Egyptians might have possessed advanced tools, perhaps even some form of power machinery, or techniques like ultrasonic drilling, to achieve these results. This is, of course, a highly controversial idea within mainstream Egyptology. It's like suggesting they had power tools from a futuristic hardware store, while everyone else insists they were just very, very good with hand tools. A quirky tidbit in this debate involves the tube drills themselves. While no actual ancient Egyptian tube drills for hard stone have been definitively found, copper tubes would likely have corroded away or been recycled. Their existence is inferred from the drill cores left behind, the central pillar of stone. That remains when a hollow drill is used. Some of these cores show a distinct tapering, being slightly narrower at the bottom than at the top, which is consistent with the wear on a tubular drill bit as it grinds its way down. The debate then centers on the material of this tube. Was it always copper or something harder? And more importantly, how it was rotated with enough speed and force to cut through granite so efficiently, even with an abrasive. The precision required to keep a long tube drill from binding or wobbling as it cuts deep into hard stone is also a significant challenge. Engineers and Egyptologists still argue about the exact nature of the tools and techniques used to create features like deep, parallel-sided core drill holes and extensive flat saw cuts in hard stones like granite. Specifically, whether known tools and methods are sufficient to explain all observed features, or if more advanced, perhaps even lost technologies were employed. As you examine these ancient tool marks, you're struck by the meticulousness and skill they represent. Whether achieved by patient artisans wielding simpler tools with unparalleled mastery over years, or by technicians employing a more advanced, lost technology, the results are undeniable. The surfaces are smooth, the holes are round, the cuts are straight. These aren't just functional cuts. There's an artistry, a pride in workmanship evident even in these utilitarian features. It makes you wonder about the unnamed craftsmen who toiled in the quarries and workshops. What knowledge did they possess? What secrets of stone did they understand? The stones themselves are mostly silent, offering only these cryptic clues in the form of grooves, striations, and perfectly formed curves. They challenge our assumptions about the limits of ancient technology and the ingenuity of the human mind. It's a puzzle carved in granite, a testament to a level of skill that continues to inspire both admiration and intense debate, leaving the hard stone evidence of potentially advanced drilling and cutting techniques. Your journey takes a lighter, more aerodynamic turn. You find yourself in a hushed museum gallery, peering into a glass case at a small, unassuming wooden object known as the Saqqara bird. Discovered in 1898 during the excavation of a tomb in Saqqara, not far from the Step Pyramid, this artifact dates to around 200 BCE during the Ptolemaic period. At first glance, it looks like a charming, if somewhat stylized, carving of a bird, perhaps a falcon, a common motif in Egyptian art. It's made of sycamore wood, about 14 centimeters, 5.5 inches long, with a wingspan of around 18 centimeters, 7 inches. It has a distinct fuselage, wings, and a tail. But as you look closer, certain features begin to stand out, sparking a debate that has lasted for decades. The bird has no legs. Its wings are shaped in a way that, to a modern eye, resembles an airfoil, thicker at the front, tapering towards the back, and with a slight dihedral, upward angle from the fuselage to the wingtip, all features crucial for aerodynamic lift and stability in flight. The tail is vertical, more like the rudder of an airplane than the fan-shaped tail of most birds. And there's a curious notch or groove on the tail, the purpose of which is unclear. For most of its existence in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, it was catalogued simply as a wooden bird object, likely a child's toy, a votive offering, or perhaps a weather vane meant to be mounted on the mast of a sacred boat. These are all plausible explanations. The mainstream historical fact is that it is indeed an ancient wooden artifact from a Ptolemaic-era tomb. Its conventional interpretation as a toy or a religious effigy is widely accepted by most Egyptologists. The ancient Egyptians were skilled woodcarvers, and depictions of birds, especially falcons representing the god Horus, were ubiquitous. A child playing with a wooden bird, or a bird effigy being placed in a tomb as a protective amulet or a symbol of the soul's flight, fits comfortably within our understanding of Egyptian culture and funerary practices. It's easy to imagine a small child happily swooping it through the air, making whoosh noises millennia ago. Just a normal Tuesday in ancient Saqqara. However, in 1969, Dr. Khalil Messaha, an Egyptian physician, archaeologist, and crucially, an amateur model aircraft enthusiast, was studying the object. He was struck by its aerodynamic features. He noted the airfoil-shaped wings, the dihedral, and the vertical stabilizer-like tail. He built a replica of the Saqqara bird and claimed that it was capable of gliding for a considerable distance. This led him to propose a radical theory. The Saqqara bird was not a toy, but an actual model of an ancient glider or aircraft. He suggested that the ancient Egyptians possessed knowledge of aerodynamics, and that perhaps even experimented with flight. This theory, as you can imagine, caused quite a stir. Ancient Egyptians and biplanes? Not quite, but gliders? It certainly fires the imagination. The idea that the principles of flight were understood, even experimented with thousands of years before the Wright brothers, is a tantalizing prospect. This ancient glider theory is, of course, highly controversial and is not accepted by mainstream academia. Critics point out that the Saqqara bird lacks crucial features for a functional aircraft, most notably a horizontal stabilizer on the tail, which is essential for controlled flight. Without it, the model would be unstable and likely tumble. The wings, while airfoil-like, are also quite thick for efficient gliding. Furthermore, there is no other supporting archaeological evidence, no larger ancient aircraft, no treatises on aerodynamics, no depictions of flying machines unless you count those Abydos glyphs we discussed earlier, which is a whole other can of worms. The notch on the tail, which some proponents of the glider theory suggest might have held a missing horizontal stabilizer, is considered by others to be simply an attachment point for feathers or streamers if it were a toy or a ceremonial object. It's a classic case of interpreting an ambiguous artifact through the lens of modern knowledge. We see airplanes, so we look for ancient airplanes. Archaeologists and aviation historians still argue whether the Saqqara bird is merely a stylized avian effigy or toy, or if it's seemingly. Aerodynamic features suggest it was a model of an ancient Egyptian attempt at a heavier-than-air flying machine. A quirky tidbit surrounding the Saqqara bird is that its rediscovery and popularization in the 1970s coincided with a surge of interest in ancient astronaut theories and OP arts, out-of-place artifacts. The bird became a poster child for the idea that ancient civilizations possessed lost high technologies, possibly derived from extraterrestrial contact. It was often presented alongside other controversial artifacts like the dendrolites or the Abydos helicopter as proof. This association, while exciting for some, probably didn't help its case for serious academic consideration as a glider. It became a bit too entangled with the fringe, making it harder for mainstream scholars to engage with the aerodynamic arguments without appearing to endorse the more outlandish theories. It's a shame when a genuinely curious object gets hijacked by a particular agenda, making objective analysis more difficult. Look, it flies. Therefore, aliens, and not usually a winning academic argument. As you gaze at the little wooden bird, poised as if ready for takeoff, you're caught between the mundane and the extraordinary. Is it a simple child's plaything, imbued with the innocent dreams of flight that children in all ages share? Is it a sacred symbol meant to guide a soul skyward? Or is it a tiny, enigmatic clue, a whisper from the past hinting at a knowledge of aerodynamics that we have long assumed was a purely modern invention? The Sakara bird, small as it is, carries a weighty cargo of speculation. It reminds us that sometimes the most profound mysteries come in the most unassuming packages, and that even a simple wooden toy, seen through different eyes, can challenge our understanding of what was possible in the ancient world. It sits there forever on the verge of flight, a silent invitation to wonder. Our journey through the unexplained mysteries of ancient Egypt is drawing to a close, but not before we embark on one final, tantalizing quest, the search for the lost tomb of Queen Nefertiti. Her name, meaning the beautiful one has come forth, is synonymous with elegance, power, and an aura of profound mystery. The iconic painted limestone bust of Nefertiti, discovered in 1912 by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt in the workshop of the sculptor Thutmose at Amarna, has made her face one of the most recognized visages from antiquity. She was the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king, who, in the 14th century BCE, during the New Kingdom's 18th dynasty, radically transformed Egypt's religious landscape by promoting the worship of a single deity, the sun disk Aten, and moving the capital to a new city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna. Despite her fame and the wealth of art depicting her, often in positions of near-equal status to her husband Akhenaten, Nefertiti's final resting place remains one of Egypt's most enduring and sought-after archaeological prizes. The mainstream historical fact is that Nefertiti played a crucial role during the Amarna period. She wasn't just a passive queen. She was an active participant in Akhenaten's religious revolution, often shown officiating alongside him in temple ceremonies, smiting enemies, and even, uniquely for a queen, driving her own chariot. She bore Akhenaten's 6 daughters, 2 of whom may have later become queens themselves. However, around the 12th or 14th year of Akhenaten's 17-year reign, Nefertiti seems to disappear from the historical record. What happened to her? Did she die? Was she disgraced? Or did she perhaps take on a new name and role, possibly even ruling as a co-regent or pharaoh in her own right under a different name, like Smenkhare or Neferneferuddin, before Tutankhamun, who was likely Akhenaten's son by a minor wife, or possibly Nefertiti's son or son-in-law, ascended the throne? Her ultimate fate is shrouded in uncertainty. The search for her tomb has spanned decades and covered vast swathes of Egyptian sand. Logically, one might expect her to have been buried at Amarna, the city she and Akhenaten founded. Indeed, a royal tomb was prepared for Akhenaten and his family there, but was plundered and desecrated after the Amarna period ended and the old gods were restored. While some believe Nefertiti might have been initially interred there, perhaps in one of the subsidiary chambers, her mummy has never been identified among the remains found. Others speculate that, given the turmoil following Akhenaten's reign and the damnatio memoriae, the official condemnation and erasure from records, that befell the Amarna royals, her burial might have been moved to a more secret location, perhaps in the Valley of the Kings at Thebes, modern Luxor, the traditional necropolis of New Kingdom pharaohs. This is where the hunt has intensified in recent years. It's the ultimate cold case, an archaeological whodunit with a queen as the missing person. Finding her would be like discovering the holy grail of Egyptology, probably with slightly less singing and fewer French nights. The quirky and highly publicized tidbit in the recent search for Nefertiti's tomb came in 2015. British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves, while examining high-resolution scans of the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62, in the Valley of the Kings, noticed what he believed were faint traces of sealed doorways hidden beneath the painted plaster of the north and west walls of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. He proposed a sensational theory. Tutankhamun's tomb, which is unusually small for a pharaoh, might actually be the outer section of a much larger tomb complex, with the hidden chambers beyond belonging to none other than Nefertiti, its original intended occupant. Tutankhamun, having died unexpectedly young, would have been hastily interred in this antechamber. This theory ignited a firestorm of excitement. Radar scans were conducted, yielding tantalizing but ultimately inconclusive results, with some initial reports suggesting the presence of voids, while later, more thorough scans failed to confirm them or offered alternative explanations like natural rock fissures. The Egyptian authorities have been, understandably, cautious about allowing any invasive drilling without more definitive proof. The dream of simply knocking on a wall in Tut's tomb and hearing Nefertiti call out, "Who's there?" remains for now just a dream. Egyptologists and archaeologists still argue passionately about the possible location of Nefertiti's tomb, with theories ranging from a hidden chamber within Tutankhamun's tomb to an undiscovered tomb in the main valley of the Kings or the less explored Western Valley, or even back at Amarna or another as yet unknown site. The lack of definitive evidence has allowed speculation to flourish. Several unidentified female royal mummies from the New Kingdom period have been found over the years, like the younger lady in KV35, now strongly suggested by DNA to be Tutankhamun's mother, but not Nefertiti, but none have been conclusively identified as the famous queen. The search involves piecing together fragmentary inscriptions, re-examining known tombs for hidden clues, and employing cutting-edge remote sensing technology. Each new discovery, each anomalous scan, brings a fresh wave of hope, followed often by cautious reevaluation. As you contemplate the beautiful, enigmatic face of Nefertiti's bust, you feel the pull of this unsolved mystery. She was a queen who stood at the center of a religious and cultural revolution, a woman of immense influence and clearly captivating beauty. Her disappearance from the historical record and the unknown fate of her mortal remains have only added to her mystique. The search for her tomb is more than just an archaeological dig. It's a quest to reconnect with a pivotal figure from a fascinating era, to perhaps understand more about the dramatic end of the Amarna period and the transition to Tutankhamun's reign. Will her tomb ever be found? Will it be a treasure trove rivaling Tutankhamun's, or a plundered chamber holding only faint echoes of her glory? Or will she remain forever elusive, her final secret kept safe by the desert sands and the passage of millennia? The quest continues, a testament to our enduring fascination with ancient Egypt's powerful women and their still hidden stories. The sands whisper her name, but her location remains one of the last great riddles of the pharaohs. And so our journey through some of ancient Egypt's most perplexing mysteries, those enigmas that science still grapples with, gently comes to a close for tonight. We've walked with phantoms in the Fayum, questioned the age of silent stone sentinels, and peer into the cosmic alignments of colossal tombs. We've seen how human ingenuity, millennia ago, created wonders that still challenge our understanding, from the chemistry of vibrant pigments to the almost impossible precision of their stonework. The desert wind seems to sigh around you now, soft, ancient lullaby. The stars above the Nile, those same stars that guided the pharaoh's souls, begin to feel a little closer, a little more familiar. These mysteries, these unanswered questions are not meant to frustrate, but to inspire wonder, to remind us that the past is a vast, often unreadable landscape, and our understanding is always evolving, always a work in progress. Let the echoes of chanting priests, the rasp of copper tools on granite, the silent gaze of god kings, and the whisper of undiscovered secrets fade gently into the background of your mind. Allow the weight of these ancient stones and timeless riddles to settle, not as a burden, but as a soft blanket of curiosity, lulling you towards rest. The land of the pharaohs will keep its secrets for a little longer, waiting patiently under the moonlit sands. And perhaps in your dreams you'll find an answer or two, or simply wander through those grand silent halls, a peaceful explorer in the landscape of your own imagination. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye and see you again in the next stories.